Welcome to another Timer Tip Tuesday. Today we're going to be talking about RaceDay scoring integration with RFID technology. While we let people get settled in here real quick, just a couple of housekeeping notes. First of all, if you're worried about it or really want to hear me talk more, I don't know why. You can just hang tight and we'll get you a copy of the slides and a recording of this presentation later on today. Also, if you haven't used GoToWebinar before, in that little toolbox for you, there is a place for you to ask questions if you'd like during the webinar. We will answer those on the back end. We've got Matt Avery and James Harris on the back end there. And then we'll also have some time at the end to socialize things and chat through it a bit. There's also a button that says CC if you do want closed captioning. There, you do have to enable that yourself. That's not something we do. So without further ado, let's talk a little bit about RFID technology. And first and foremost, I want to highlight the fact that when we talk about RFID, we're talking about the RFID brand, the RFID race timing systems. And that differs from RFID, the kind of broader technology concept. So we're talking about a very specific professional grade hardware and not something that's coming off the shelf and is a little bit more customized and user built. So just be aware of that. So we're talking about a specific brand of hardware here when we talk about RFID. So we'll do some quick introductions here. We'll talk a little bit about the setup in RaceDay scoring. We'll talk a little bit about the setup in RFID itself, about file streams, some best practices, and then we'll have a little bit of a Q&A there. We're also lucky enough to have Todd Henderlong joining us. A lot of you have talked with him, worked with him, and know him. He's been really great, just giving us direction, pointers, best practices, and support throughout this. And he'll be there supporting us on this webinar a little bit as well. So big thanks to Todd, and also worth noting, 2020 Alan Jones Timer of the Year award winner. So as far as the setup goes in RaceDay scoring for this, the recommended setup with RFID is to use file streams. So this is, when we talk about this, you may have different setups, but if you're coming to this for the first time, if you're wondering how to get set up and all of this, file streams are the way to go. This recommendation, of course, is coming from the man himself, Todd. So we recommend using file streams with RFID. To set this up, you want to go to your streams and select file, custom, or chip system type for file streams, and then you'll see that you get this second file type. Hey, Todd.
Hey.
Box down here. So the stream type, you choose file, customer, system, chip system type, and then it will open up another file type down here that you will select on. We'll get to that in the next slide. It's also a best practice to name your streams after your box. Keep in mind that those streams do live on your specific computer, and we have a little bit of advice on that in a moment as well. So that second box, you will then select RFID file. Once this is set, the stream type will also rename itself. So just wanted to highlight that. You can see that little discrepancy there, but you need to select file or chip system type and then RFID file on the file type. The folder path should be the folder where all of your reads for only this stream are stored. So keep in mind that we have a file extension in there of TXT, but if you put a bunch of other text files in that folder, it will try to consume them. So, best practice, keep it clean. RFID file streams do require the users to change all read dates to the race date, as that data is not sent through with the reads by default. You can change that, but for the purposes of this webinar, we're going to stick with the defaults here as far as what that stream is expecting and what you're sending from RFID. So just a note there, you can add that as a piece of data to send, but by default, that's not there. So again, change all read dates, that's important. If you have a race that crosses the midnight hour, 24-hour race, Maybe you have a challenge race that's on 2 different days. Just make sure you set up your streams really carefully here and be aware of the pitfalls that can occur with that. So when you're setting up the file streams in the advanced settings near the bottom, there is a place for you to input the device IP. If you're wondering where that is, if you go into your RFID box and go to settings, networking, and then you can go to IP address. That's where you'll find that. That IP address needs to be unique. You can't have 2 devices with the same IP address assigned during a race. So just be aware of that. On the RFID server side, so now stepping over to RFID server, which is the middleware for this hardware, you're going to want to go to settings. Make sure you have a bib and chip file loaded, bib chip file there. If you're wondering what that is, it is a 2-column file that maps your bibs and your chip codes there. So you'll select use a bib chip file and point to that file name. Order of fields is important here, so do keep that in mind. This is an example of a bib chip file. This might jog your memory if you were not remembering that in those first couple slides there. But bib chip file, 2 columns, bib and then chip separated by a comma. Very straightforward there. So next in RFID server, you're going to go to target files and you're going to set the folder. The file format you want to use is RFID timing, and then you're going to target a folder for a second file as well. Now, something that's really a useful tool here that Todd has highlighted and can speak a little bit more on, kind of near after we get through the best practices, is being comfortable and aware of how to look at that output file. So when you look at that output file, you need to kind of understand what the data is looking like here. So you can see in this example, we have the chip code, we have the bib number, and then we have a timestamp there. And this can be really important to do because if you have something that's not in your bib chip reference file, like this one circled here, you need to be able to identify that and comfortable identifying that. So this is a really important skill to have as a RFID user. Because again, that data is being sent over and it's going to be an unknown in race day scoring. So you might need to go back in and figure out, oh, okay, is it an unknown? Is there's something off there? This is where you would go and assess some of that. Another important thing to do with RFID is creating a rewind file. The format should be RFID timing and the file should be a unique IP address that does not exist in other streams. This way it won't conflict with anything. So if my IP address ends, with like 0.97 for my actual box, maybe I want my my rewind file to be 0.98 there. It is not a real box, but it's kind of acting as that as far as race day scoring is concerned. And this is an important redundancy. And we'll talk about this a little bit more in best practices. Creating a rewind file, again, like you want that file name to be that fictional IP address. We're going to jump back to race day scoring in a second and kind of highlight that. So you want that IP address for the rewind file in the description field here as well. That way you can easily identify it. So here's my start box, and then here's my rewind file for that. So you can see in the description right here, it's highlighting that the rewind file is that IP. So and it's also worth noting here that these are all different than the actual box's IP addresses. This way we're able to have this redundancy there. So that does bring us to the best practices here. The first one, and this is really, really helpful, especially if you're just starting to use race day scoring. Set up a dummy race to distribute streams for all devices in your company. Todd's fortunate enough to be in a position where he's got a lot of boxes. That also is like a lot of streams to set up if you have a new computer, a lot of streams to set up if you have a new timer. So keeping in mind that streams, kind of live only on the computer that they're used on. The best way to get them on every computer is to have this dummy race with every stream assigned already. That way you just import that race and all of those streams are available for you to assign on the computer. Really helpful. Now keep in mind there that when you point, that you'll need to re-point the file path for each of those streams still. You know, they might be looking at a different users folder.
Or freeze.
I think he froze up. Let me message him.
Just while he's frozen, just real quick on that. When I assign when I assign when I set up races for my other timers, and then they download that backup from RaceDay scoring. OneDrive, if you use OneDrive, it likes to hijack all your files, and so it's always going to be looking for a file on OneDrive. And our folders that we set up to receive the data from the boxes are on the desktops of each of our timers' computers. So every time they download that file, they need to then point to the file on their computer, because if not, it's going to start looking for it on OneDrive. There'll be no data there, and then they'll freak out because they're not seeing any raw data coming in. So
yeah, thanks for covering for me dropping internet, Todd.
That's right.
So yeah, getting comfortable with rewinding streams. If I'm saying anything that I missed there, I apologize.
You're good.
Always set your streams to main streams in RaceDay scoring. The exception being if you have a finished links file there that might override that. But really, anytime you're working with chip systems, those should be main streams. And then again, you know, this is all advice coming from Todd. If your box is beeping, you don't have a problem, but be comfortable with rewinding, because if you rewind once a race as a practice, the day that you actually need it, you won't be panicking because it'll be just part of your workflow. And then keep your data clean. Clear out old race data and archive it in a systemic manner before each race, so that you don't accidentally pull in old reads, especially if you are changing all those read dates. That could really be a problem for you. As Todd was just saying, be careful with OneDrive. And then if you're in a situation with a time zone change, make sure times on your boxes aren't in a different time zone than the race is at RunSignup. If you're wondering where you can check that really quickly at a glance, right next to the race's name in the upper left-hand corner of RaceDay scoring, it tells you what time zone it's set to there. So just always good practice. Make sure everything's where you're apples to apples there. So Todd, do you want to take the screen a little bit and do any best practices, or we can open the floor up?
Yeah, just a couple things. You know, when we were talking about that output file and the middleware and the file format, I use RaceDay timing is my format. There are other ones you can use. We use the decimal output. You can use the hex output if you want. So there's a lot of different things for depending on each individual's timer and how they want to use that data. You can adjust the output from our boxes in a number of different fashions. I use the RaceDay time or the RFID timing simply because it's the simplest. It has the chip number and the bib number. That's all it looks at. We don't even use dates, so I don't even have to update the dates in the races to make sure, unless we're in a rare 24-hour crossing over to the next day situation. But that's just how I do it. But it's important for everyone to know that depending on how you're using RaceDay scoring and the filters and the stuff that you want to look at, you can change the output from RFID server to match whatever it is however you have it set up in RaceDay scoring. And then I talked about the OneDrive. It's very useful in RFID server. You can have a secondary location. So for all of my timers, I have it set up where the primary output file is going to a file on their desktop, and that's what RaceDay scoring is looking at. I also have you can set up a secondary output, and I do send that secondary output to OneDrive. So I can actually look at all of my timers' data files real time if I want to, in case they're having an issue. The one caution is if you're looking at a data file that's coming in real time, do not open that file itself. Take it, copy it, and look at the copy. Because if you're in manipulating a file that's being created live, you can corrupt it, and then it'll kind of really cause some anxious moments. The beautiful thing about the RFID race timing equipment is that rewind feature. And as you alluded to, sorry, if the box is beeping, you don't have a problem. The data's in there, even if you have it coming in the wrong format, even if you have it going out in the wrong format, doesn't matter. As long as the box is beeping, that data's there, and through that rewind feature, you can pull it out in any format you want. If you have the wrong bib chip file, no problem. You can correct all your settings and get that data out. So, I mean, it's not the end of the world, but for my selfish purposes, I hate getting panic phone calls on Saturday morning. And I particularly hate, how do I do a rewind? Because if you do a rewind every race, you'll always know how to do it for the one time a year that you need it. But yeah, those are just some real quick tips on using race day scoring. And like I said, the functionality is tremendous. So if you do have a special race that needs dates or times or, you know, what have you, you can adjust your output.
What so Todd, I have a question for you then. What did you think is like, what's your workflow, at least as far as keeping those data folders, you know, clear and clean? Are you clearing those out race morning? Are you clearing them out as you lead up to the race? Do you have an archiving method for those?
We don't really need to archive it because the data is stored in our box. So our particular equipment, we can store 100, 200,000 pieces of data. And so I could go and do a rewind on a box from a race that happened a month ago and still pull it out. You know, we do recommend every 3-4 months, clear your box because it does have a finite memory. And if it does get full, it limits the rewind features. But for the most part, I used to archive them. I don't even bother anymore. If I have to, I can go pull it out. I usually let it sit on the computers for the week following the race. If there's going to be any questions, you know, it's going to come within that point. At that point, when we start getting ready for next week, we just clear out all those files and they're ready to go.
Avery, how are we looking on the back end? Do we have some questions there that we want to socialize?
Pretty good. No major questions that need to be brought up to everyone. There was a question about...
Just to kind of go back, and can you go back to the screen about the rewind? Because it's definitely, obviously, something that not everybody's doing, and just want to make sure that we're clear about the IP addressing, because that question did come up. So yeah. You're setting up a rewind for each actual piece of equipment, and you're setting up that rewind setting for each piece of equipment. We have to have a unique IP address in RaceDay scoring, so you're just creating like different numbers for the rewind files, but those numbers have to be different, correct?
Well, yes and no. So what I do is I have a rewind stream, and it's always, it's very hard to see, but so I've set up a rewind and it's just called start line rewind, and I make it an IP address of 192.168.1.98. That's it for everybody. So everybody's computer has a rewind, start line rewind with that IP address. When you go do your rewind in RFID server, you can name the file. So it's not like it's hard coded in the box. So everybody, all of my timers, when they do a rewind, they go and set up the rewind, and they name their rewind file 192.168.1.98. So it's, you know, we get a lot of races and a lot of people, continuity, you know, doing everything the same way all the time is really important. So everybody has that same rewind. So we have across all of my races, all my computers, they all have streams, and one stream is called start line rewind with that IP address. One is called finish line rewind with that IP address. We have one that's transition 1 for triathlons, and it has the same IP address. So we will have, you know, maybe 6 rewind streams set up, all with different IP addresses, but you don't have to have them different across every race, or every race doesn't have to have a unique rewind file name. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I just want to make sure everybody was clear about the fact that you can't mix the rewind data from one piece of equipment with another one. So that's the main point.
Well, you can. The important thing is you don't
But
want to
not
do your
for
rewind.
different locations. I mean, you
Yeah,
can't.
you don't want to name your rewind file the same as the box because it'll overwrite it. If you're using, in my case, I'm using box 121, and then I set up a rewind for the start line for that, and I also call it 121, it's going to overwrite it, and it's going to cause, it's going to cause a lot of anxious moments. Again, it's nothing that can't be fixed because you can always, reset everything and start again because we have the data, but yeah, it's just, you have to, in the past, we could call a rewind file whatever we wanted because we could point to it when we were using Race Director. Now it's got to be an IP address. So you have to make sure that when you do your rewind and you save the file, you name it the IP address that you have set up for that particular rewind.
Got a question from Sydney here. Is there a problem if the streaming stops for a minute during the race, like if the internet drops out?
Well, if the streaming stops going to race day scoring or the feed from the timing box?
I'm guessing a remote timing box, and I think that would just resync again once you're back online.
Yeah, if you're using, I mean, there are remote servers that you can use. If I don't personally do it. I always have everything hardwired, or we use nano stations. I don't depend on cells and clouds to use those remote servers. But the Outreach, which is a remote server that RFID race timing offers, will resync once if it drops connection. As soon as it gets connection, it's going to automatically rewind everything from the time that was lost.
We do have in the audience.
On the flip side of that, if you do have a hard connection, if you're connected to RFID server and for whatever reason the Ethernet cable gets unplugged or your nano drops out or something like that, it won't reestablish it. That's when you would do your rewind. We've had that where we've had, one person comes up says, I don't have a time, and another person comes says, I don't have a time, and you realize that all 6 people have the same finish time or finish range, and we can say, oh, well, we must have dropped connection. Let's do a rewind, and it'll have it there. And again, if you already have done a rewind after the first couple finishers come in, you did a rewind, then you just hit the button rewind, and boom, you're good to go.
And that's when you recommend doing it, is after the first couple finishers.
Yeah, I usually because you won't have anything except your test reads to pull in, but I usually, once my first couple finishers come in, we can rewind within a specific date and time. And so I just basically, if I know the first finisher came in at 8:14 and 12 seconds AM, I do a rewind from that point on. I see, okay, well, there's my first 3 people, save to text file, name it the IP address that's set up for that particular rewind stream, and boom, it's there. And then if you ever need to hit another rewind, you just rewind, save, when you're done.
That's really good advice. We do also have in the audience today the owner of box 0.98. So
yeah, well, don't use that as your rewind.
All right, I'm gonna power back through a couple other housekeeping things just in case.
Real quickly before we move on, I just want to remind everybody about the replay, in essence, rewind feature in RaceDay scoring too. So again, on the stream level, if you ever are sure that the data is in the file and you just want to replay, if you select replay on the actual stream, we're going to go and grab all the data in that file and replay it into RaceDay scoring. So, 2 different aspects being talked about here. One is rewinding from the equipment, and then the other is if for some reason you feel like you're just missing something and it's in the file, getting into scoring, you can also basically replay, rewind from the stream level in RaceDay scoring.
Just one real quick thing on these. I'm assuming you're going to make these slides available. If
yes.
People are RFID race timing system users and they look at the screenshot of the box and where to find your networks and stuff, they're going to say, I've never seen this before. That's our new system, the ecosystem that nobody in the US except I think 3 people have. So don't freak out. It's the same thing in the Ultra boxes where you go to settings network and it'll tell you where your IP addresses are. But yeah, it's cool. Probably full disclosure on that.
Yep. Just in case there's anything more that needs to come into the questions area, I just wanted to make sure everyone was aware. 2025 Timer Industry Survey is out there. We really appreciate it if y'all take this. The more of you that do this timer survey, the better data and we have that we can share back with you as far as the state of the industry for timing and the trends that we're seeing. That's something that we release early in the year 2026. So please do take a moment to do that. And then also the Timer Education Summit, again in Tampa, Florida, January 27th and 28th. We're gonna have a little bit more time this year. We're gonna have a couple more sessions at that. So if you're thinking about it, again, this is something that sold out last year and is on track to do so again this year. So don't hesitate too much on that to make sure that you still have a spot there for that. Support channels, just another highlight there. If you are a newer timer coming in here, do keep in mind if you're using RaceDay scoring that we've got the Get Help button there with 7-day-a-week support. So don't hesitate for that. If you are just setting up your race with RFID race timing for the first time, you can use that Get Help button leading up to race day for us to take a look at your setup and see if there's any issues there that you might have with setting up your streams or whatnot. We do just ask that you do that before Friday, so that it's not kind of down the queue in terms of triage on the mornings there. Anything else coming in there? Right. Well, big thanks again to Todd for joining us and lending his expertise and time to this. It's always better to hear it from the person who knows the most. So again, thanks again, Todd. 2020 Alan Jones Timer of the Year.
Thank you so much, Todd.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, everybody.